Good afternoon. My name is Judith Royer, one of the Sisters of St. Joseph, the CSJs at LMU, and the director of the CSJ Center for Reconciliation and Justice on the LMU campus. On behalf of the Sisters of St. Joseph and the CSJ Center, I want to welcome all of you, family, friends, colleagues of the 5 people we are celebrating today. The 5 calls that I get to make to our Hidden Hero nominees each year to let them know that they are the selection committee's awardees are the most exciting and the most joyful calls I make all year. The Hidden Heroes program is designed to honor members of the LMU and law school faculty, staff, student community, alums and/or community partners who have been committed to social justice, service, and action. These are people who have gone largely unrecognized, under the radar, as we call it. So this is a good time to tell some small part of the stories of this year's 5 awardees. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our dedicated Hidden Heroes Selection Committee and the university members who nominated our awardees. Also, one more opportunity to say congratulations to our honorees. I will now introduce Doris Baisley, the presentation editor, and one of the writers of today's program, to talk to you about the unique nature of this recognition ceremony. Apparently there's technical problems getting her on, so I will share a little bit of what she would have told you. Dory and I teach in the theater department. So to celebrate our hidden heroes, we dramatize them. We match up our awardees in conversation with playwrights to put their words on stage, or in this case, on screen. As the story moves through the writer to the actor and out to the audience, and then back to the storyteller, it creates a circle of communication, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dory to talk about how the story moves.
It moved right back to me. Thank you. It creates it brings the individual story into a new context with new meaning and new power. And what I really want to do right now is thank Louise Selgus, Beth Ruscio, Bonnie Banfield, and Leon Martell for joining me on the writing team in this really interesting process. And now we can start our 2020 tribute. Thank you.
In a wounded world in need of healing and compassion.
In the midst of our vulnerability and emptiness.
In a time of limited and unevenly shared global resources.
We ask for the grace to stand with the poor, the oppressed, the suffering.
To promote social justice.
To promote economic justice.
To be a community of unity and reconciliation. We had a fire in our beautiful greenhouse the first week of the stay-at-home order. We had 5 moms with 12 kids under the age of 10. They just grabbed their kids, came over here to the Yellow House. So we got them situated in a hotel around the corner. Now, in this house, we have 3 families, 2 single people, and I live here too. We're trying to help our past residents stay in their housing if they've lost their jobs in the pandemic. It's harder than ever for people right now. And so, yeah, the work goes on. But we're doing it. We're doing it. 24 years.
13 of us gathered in a circle in the living room, 13 women, all different ethnicities, different experiences. Judy called it a creative thinking meeting. She said, you only have to come one night and we'll have dinner.
We had a basic idea. We wanted it to be a long-term residence for women and children. Emergency shelters are necessary, but we talked about this as the last place before you move into permanent housing.
And we wanted it to be a community center to offer support to a neighborhood where most families are just one paycheck away from homelessness.
This is sort of built on what I learned from Margie Tuitt about what she called the burden of knowing. Margie Tuitt. Well, I have an amazing birth family, I mean really, but when it comes to my mother in the movement, it's Margie Tuitt. She was a Dominican sister, almost 6 feet tall, wide smile, and a laugh that was never dishonest, always out of joy. If it wasn't there, she didn't laugh. So she had started raising awareness in religious communities about doing analysis in the work for justice. I remember her always asking, how can we do better?
We must critique our work, make the connections among forms of oppression, act in solidarity with people who are poor and struggling. The times are too serious to do otherwise.
I was just finishing my dissertation at the University of Chicago. I had taken her workshop and we were sitting on the banks of Lake Michigan.
What do you really want to be, Judy? Do you want to be liberal? Or do you want to be radical?
It caught me up short. It challenged me to look at my life and how I wanted to spend my days. I grew up in, I call it now, a culturally Catholic family. When my older sister decided to become a nun, I didn't want to do the Me Too kind of thing. So I'm not going. But then there was something like, I should just go to the convent and give it a try. So I did that. I wanted to be a nurse, but they didn't need nurses, so it was, you're going to be a teacher. After 1 year of teaching second grade, I was asked by the community to get a master's and come teach at Mount St. Mary's College. So I did that. And then they asked me to go on to get a PhD.
What do you want, Judy?
I got a master's and a doctorate, and I was supposed to go back to Los Angeles to teach. But that's when the 4 church women were murdered in El Salvador. I did my first civil disobedience. And then came the Women's Ordination Conference. There was a group of women, members of Las Hermanas, Yolanda, Ada Maria, Rosalinda.
We're not going to a male-celebrated liturgy. We need to hear the voices of women. We stand with our sisters, the impoverished, the disempowered.
And I was, no, I'm going to follow the lead of Las Hermanas. I'm going to follow my sisters who understand oppression even more, so much more, double more than I do. I talked to the president of the college. It was a long talk. And I finally said, I don't really think you want a feminist Marxist who's going to be having women celebrate Eucharist at your college. I handed in my resignation. I got the job at the House of Ruth in East LA. It was an emergency shelter, but also a neighborhood center. I was doing that and working at the Peace and Justice Center and mobilizing with Women of Conscience. We did civil disobedience once a month.
We did a lot of civil disobedience.
We were saying no to injustice, and I like all that.
Because you're a Leo.
Sitting in jail's not great, though.
But you must take the time. Do the analysis. Make the connection between the individual and what is happening in the world.
In House of Ruth, there was a young mom, this really great mom. She had 3 small kids, and we went to a demonstration. Money for jobs, not for war, U.S. out of El Salvador. And while we were marching, I could see her beginning to understand what she had been told to think about herself was wrong. She didn't have a job because she was lazy or didn't want to work. She didn't have a job because there are social and economic systems that keep people down and are designed to do that until they are considered expendable and then they die.
The burden of knowing. There's no vacation from it.
In 1984, I signed the New York Times ad that said there needed to be a dialogue among Catholics on the issue of abortion.
The laws that govern women's lives are made by males, a male hierarchy in isolation from women's experience. That's why we're asking to dialogue.
I was the only person in a religious community in the Los Angeles area who signed it. All 28 nuns and priests who signed it were threatened that if we didn't recant, we'd be thrown out. The church leaders in Los Angeles said no one could send anybody to the House of Ruth because of my pro-abortion position, which wasn't an adequate description. Anyway, we were told it's going to be resolved. Just don't say anything. But then I was asked to go on the Phil Donahue show with Margie Tuitt. So, you know, I have these letters on file. It's sort of like you can get 3 letters, like warnings from your community. So that was my first letter. I think they were relieved when I finally went to Nicaragua, you know, into a war zone. And then Margie died.
During the consecration at her funeral, we surrounded the priest. He elbows us aside to give him sacred space, but we stood firm. We extended our hands over the Eucharist and said the words of consecration so loudly you could hear it all the way through that huge church.
Women Church showed up at my funeral in just the way I wanted. Eucharist belongs to the people.
She taught me so much.
Remember Pentecost?
A group of us, all women, sneaked into the cathedral in between masses, and we celebrated the Eucharist right there, right in the middle of the cathedral.
Without any priests, male, of course.
So that was letter number 2. I was asked to take over Margie's position at the National Assembly of Religious Women, and I accepted, which, by the way, was my 3rd letter from the community. And then I worked as staff coordinator for Women for Guatemala. But one day, it's a very hot day in summer in Chicago, a friend of mine came and said,
Do you know that the Immaculate Heart community in Los Angeles has a house they want to use for women and children?
My parents were getting older. And LA, you know, I'm a 3rd generation LA person.
What do you want, Judy?
I came out, met with the Immaculate Heart community and asked if we could have the house. And they said yes. I moved in, called together the 13 women.
Just come one night and have dinner.
And most of the women stayed on to become our advisory group. And 2 weeks ago, we had almost all of them here.
It was a community of women from the beginning, intentionally all women, and it still is.
And that brings us to now. Rainisha turns 22 tomorrow. She's my daughter. Yeah, I have a daughter. Teresa Simpson and I were doing training to be foster care providers for the Department of Children and Family Services, and Teresa got a call from Sentinella Hospital. They had a 4-day-old little girl, needed a home.
Do you think we could bring a baby to Alexandria House?
That's when I said the fateful words, Why don't you go to the hospital and see what you think?
Now, what do you think happened?
Teresa and I co-parent. She is part of the Alexandria House community, and Ray is God's great gift to me. Don't think nuns can't have kids. I have a favorite quote. You can't think your way into a new way of acting. You have to act your way into a new way of thinking. From the Christian tradition, I believe that the transcendent can be made immanent. That's what Alexandria House is for me. A glimpse and a promise of what is possible. The beloved community. The women displaced from the fire, they all really want to stay together. We got them into an Airbnb. They had a house meeting last night. Everybody was on it by Zoom. I mean, everybody. So now we have folks volunteering to make dinner and bring it over because our big kitchen still isn't usable. And every night they have dinner together. So yeah, the work goes on. Margie asked me how I wanted to live my life. This is it.
Me llamo Efren Chávez, soy de México, nací en Colima y me crié en Guadalajara. Pues somos 7 hermanos. Perdimos a nuestro padre, bueno, yo era muy chico, tenía 6 años. Nos crió nuestra mamá y luego mi padrastro. Yo me vine a los Estados Unidos joven, tenía 18 años. Llegué indocumentado, pero no me puedo avergonzar de eso. Al contrario, le doy gracias a Dios. Uno nunca sabe su camino. Yo ya me había casado en México, tenía un baby y pues tenía que ser un padre responsable y ofrecerle un futuro a mi hija. Por eso me vine. Empecé a trabajar en muchos lugares. Al principio llegué solo. Pasé un año solo, mi esposa y sin mi baby. Mi primera Navidad que la pasé solo fue muy triste. Y fue cuando dije, no podemos estar uno acá y otros allá. Aunque nos comamos unos frijolitos, al menos los comemos juntos. Esa era mi meta, estar juntos. Para mí, la familia es lo más importante. Por eso trabajo tanto, valoro mucho el trabajo y agradezco mucho lo que tengo. Llevo 7 años trabajando en LMU. Trabajo para el departamento de maintenance y reciclaje. Y es un departamento muy importante. No solo para mantener la universidad limpia, pero también para enseñarle a los estudiantes cómo funciona el reciclaje. Muchos en casa no saben cómo reciclar, agarran y meten todo en el pote negro, basura, plástico, papel, aluminio, todo en el mismo pote. Pero no, así no es. Entonces, por las mañanas, nosotros sacamos los containers de basura de los edificios, tarda como 2 horas, y después los regresamos. Después del break, sacamos los containers de reciclaje de los edificios, también las computadoras y los teléfonos viejos, papel, periódicos, aluminio, cartón, botellas de plástico, todo eso se separa y se recicla. Eso es un proceso muy grande. Y bueno, ahí también aprenden los estudiantes, porque yo trabajo con estudiantes también y soy un hombre muy honesto. Cuando entreno a los estudiantes les digo, a mí me gustan las cosas o bien hechas o nada. Yo cuando termines el trabajo te vas a donde vives y te comes tu breakfast bien saludable y te vas a clase, pero primero se tiene que trabajar. Ahora, hay estudiantes que dicen que no les gusta que los entrenen. Por lo menos son honestos. Para mí es muy importante aprender el carácter de una persona, porque ahí ya conoces cómo podrás hablar con ellos. Si es una dinamita, entonces se le puede entrar como, hey, ¿cómo estás? Y así evito chocar. La comunicación es muy importante. Si no hay comunicación, ahí es donde empieza el, bueno, tú dijiste o él dijo, o no, pues tú para aquí y yo para allá. Y yo trato a todo el mundo con respeto. No importa nacionalidad, nada, todos. Y para eso se necesita comunicación. Yo prefiero ser amigo que enemigo. Para ser enemigo eso se puede hacer en segundos, pero amigo cuesta, pero dura. Y bueno, así es. Trabajamos juntos y se crea confianza. Uno se puede convertir en consejero, comemos juntos. A veces no saben de nuestras comidas, pero le digo, mira, aquí un taco y si no tienen de corazón se lo doy. Uno se convierte bastante en familia, pues pasamos el día trabajando juntos y cuando llegamos a casa cenamos, vemos a los niños, a la esposa y a dormir. Y es lo mismo en la mañana. Por eso digo que tengo que agradecer y por eso valoro mi trabajo. Yo quiero mucho a LMU. Quiero aún más a los estudiantes. Son el futuro. Entonces es importante dar ejemplo. Yo aprendí de mis padres. Mi padre era muy trabajador. Era un manager de agricultura. Trabajaba en el campo. Tenía 50 hectáreas de terreno y sembraba maíz. Era un hombre muy fuerte. ¿Cómo lo puedo poner? Me enseñó a trabajar desde chiquitico. Chiquitico. No hubo juegos, no hubo canicas, no hubo nada. Era trabajar desde chiquito y cuidado si te encontraba jugando con tus amigos porque te ponía una que no se te olvidaba. Así que se trabajaba. Y yo no podía alcanzar el pedal del tractor, pero no importaba. Yo tenía que manejarlo directo y cuidado si se iba a un lado o a otro. Era súper estricto, tanto físicamente como verbalmente. Y bueno, pues aprendí a golpes. La vida me ha dado muchos golpes. Uno cuando crece es como una esponja y va absorbiendo de sus papás, incluyendo el maltrato. Mi papá era muy trabajador, de eso no puedo decir nada, pero tomaba. Él trabajaba mucho, pero se agarraba viernes, sábados y domingos para tomar y regresaba el lunes. Un lunes no regresó. Recibimos la llamada de que lo habían encontrado muerto. Así quedamos, los 7 niños huerfanitos con mi mamá, una gallinita con 7 pollitos. No nos extendió la mano nadie, ni de la familia de mi mamá, ni de la de mi papá. Hasta dormimos en la calle una vez, todos pegaditos. Mi mamá nos veía y decía, ¿qué les voy a dar? No teníamos que comer. Así que los 3 más grandes, la mayor tenía 12, hicimos un plan para ayudar a mamá. Fuimos a un lugar donde los camiones de basura botaban toda la basura. Como no sabíamos trabajar, éramos chicos, pero buscábamos en la basura vidrio, cobre, bronce. Lo juntábamos y vendíamos y le dábamos el dinero a mi mamá para poder darle de comer a nuestros hermanos. Hasta que mi mamá conoció a mi padrastro. Cuando mi mamá me contó sobre él, le dije, pues mamá, es tu vida. Y si ese hombre quiere cargar con una gallinita y 7 pollitos, pues bueno, dale. Él sí que nos ayudó. Él sí que nos aceptó. Y nos dio vida aunque no éramos sus hijos. Un hombre muy bueno. Ya yo un poco más grande, como a los 17, pensé en mi papá y por qué me había dado ese ejemplo. ¿Por qué había sido tan fuerte conmigo, con nosotros, con mi mamá? Mi madre, Rosalba Valdovinos, fue una madre increíble. La mejor madre. Y madre solo hay una. Ya murió, pero tuve la fortuna de poder agradecerle por todo lo que hizo por nosotros. Por todo lo que ella pasó, por sus malos momentos y por sus buenos momentos. Y por todo su amor, nunca se lo podré pagar. Pero lo bonito es cuando tienes tu propia familia y tomas todo eso y lo puedes tirar y empezar algo de nuevo. Quiero darle a mis hijos un mejor futuro y una versión mejor de la que yo experimenté. Sí, he pasado por mucho, pero mucha gente no ha llegado ni a la cuarta parte donde estoy yo. Así que tengo que valorarlo y ser agradecido. Yo le doy mucho valor a todo lo que me ha pasado y todo lo que tengo enfrente. Uno puede ver lo que está en la vida y mezclarlo todo y ver pura basura, pero se pueden separar las cosas. Se ve entre las cosas y se reconoce lo que se debería votar y lo que se debería rehusar, lo que se puede dejar y de lo que se puede crear algo mejor.
When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a news reporter. I went to the Cars grocery store, which is like our local supermarket in Alaska, and I saw this woman named Maria Downey. And at that time, you don't know the difference between someone who's on CNN versus your local reporter. And I just felt like it was seeing someone from the divine, someone I had seen on a TV screen. And I remember I got into the car and I said, I'm going to do that. And you know, I did do that. That was my first job. Oh, my mom is calling me right now. Do you mind? Hi, I'm in the middle of a meeting. Is everything all right? Are you okay? Okay, I'll call you back. I love you. This is the cool thing about my family, and I think you'll think it's cool. That's why I'm telling you. My mom was the first female to graduate from Georgetown School of Business. Well, the gift I have with my family is I'm like the most compassionate, right? So that's why my mom calls me. That's probably my biggest strength. So I'm not the most organized person. I think I've had to become more organized as a mother. So it allowed me to develop different gifts. My daughter's awake now too, so just one second. I'm so sorry. Just 1 minute. I'll be right with you. So sorry. Hi, this is important. I need you to have good behavior. Thank you. Okay. So I went to LMU for undergraduate school, and I went to USC for journalism, and my first job, I moved back to Alaska, and I was a news reporter for 3 years. I liked it in the beginning because I thought it was going to be a real instrument for social justice. Such a powerful medium that it would make real change. But then the better I got at it, the more I realized that it's really just a business and they're trying to make money. The first murder I covered, a man was shot in a trailer park in Alaska, and I was there for 12 hours. And his kids came and saw him and his wife. And you know, if that ever happened in an affluent neighborhood, they would never leave the body out there like that. I kept saying to the police, you know, can you just be respectful to his family? And they kind of blew me off. The next day, I covered a piece saying how police policies, depending on the neighborhood, they respond differently. But towards the end, it really changed who I was as a person. And it wasn't good. Gosh, it was not good. The day that I quit, the last story I ever did, a grandmother was on her computer and a drunk driver came in through the wall, hit her. 80 years old, broke all of her ribs. She's in the hospital, and her son was in the fire department. And I used to cover the fire department. I actually knew her son. So they gave us an exclusive story, which is really big in that industry. And it was very kind on his part. So anyway, 5 o'clock, we went there. We went live there, the scene, the wreckage of the house. It was visually very stimulating. So the news director wanted me there at 6 o'clock live, and the son called me.
We're coming home from the hospital. She's already... Her house is torn up to shreds. She's already had an incredible, horrible day. I don't want to have a live news truck in front of her house.
And I said, absolutely. So we got in the car, head back to the station, and the news director calls.
Turn around and go back.
Well, I'm not doing that. And she said Stacy was her name.
You have to do that. I'm telling you, you have to do that.
It's private property.
Well, you just go across the street and shoot from across the street.
You know, these people have been so kind to us all day long. They let us do the story, they let us do it live, and she wants to come home from the hospital. And basically, she forced my hand. I called the son, and he said,
Well, you know, Christine, I'll just take my mom out to ice cream and don't overthink it. But I'm disappointed.
there would often be a situation when I was a news reporter where, again, I'm just being honest with you, the gift I have is personal skills, and people would share things with me that they shouldn't, that could be used against them later, right? On camera. You know, I wanted to be in that business to help people. Sorry. Something I'd wanted to do since I was 5 years old. And I got it, and I got to do it in my hometown. But to realize how miserable I was. And then to say, like, okay, I need to make a change.
If you're going to do public relations, you need to do it for a place you really believe in.
Applied to LMU and got a job in PR. LMU was so transformative to me as a student. There was no question that it was the right place for me. How is it transformative? Oh my gosh. How much time do you have? So I worked in PR for LMU for 3 years, but I was like, I wonder if there's something that I could do more directly with students. And there was a job in campus ministry. I got really lucky. I loved that job. I think it taught me so many things in my life about parenting. So the retreat I started, Kairos Retreat, which stands for God's Time, Kairos. I'd spend 6 weeks working with the leaders, which was my favorite part of the job. During this process, they'd tell me their entire life path. And we're not talking, how's your day? It's tell me from the beginning of your life with God to where you are now and how you got here and all the highs and lows. And we'd form this really great small group. And then those kids, those 7 kids, go on to lead the retreat for 40 other kids. And because there's something always comes up. So I tell the leaders, there are 3 things that you can say. No matter what the student says, no matter what your feelings are, here's your role as a Kairos leader, which is as a loving mentor. I'm here to support you. I'm not judging you. God loves you exactly as you are. And there are resources available to you if you'd like me to help you find those. You know, LMU students are they're from very different families. Like, I've had students that are homeless, and then I've had students that own the Chargers. Even in Kairos, when Donald Trump was elected, 3 of my kids didn't have documentation. 4 of them voted for Trump. So it's like creating these conversations where kids are talking to one another, you know, learning by learning about the other, right?
I think I'm gay. And I don't know, is God still gonna love me? Am I in trouble? Who do I talk to? I've never told anybody this.
This is a good one for me to talk about. So my best friend is gay. So that was my first real experience learning about the other, right? His parents went to the parish priest and told him, our son is gay. And he's my age, so this is 20 years ago. And the priest says, well, he needs to admit that being gay is sinful. I was 30 years old, and I was just absolutely shocked. I mean, I'm not a perfect person. And every time I've gone to a priest, it's been lovingly forgiven. Anything. I mean, God doesn't want us carrying burdens for mistakes that we've made. So he tells me this experience. I think that these kids need to be loved as they are. I'm a real proponent that there needs to be change, and I feel that's my role as a minister. I don't think it does anyone any favors to be judgmental or unaccepting of people. I do not think that that is what our intention is. God loves each of us and wants to be in relationship with us. And this is what I'd say to that young girl. Why would he create you to have these desires if he did not want you to live out your calling as a lesbian? I'm just being honest with you. I can't lie. Excuse me, I think I hear my son. Shh, Brian, sweetheart. She's doing a story on me, can you believe it? Yeah. Whew. My son is named after Father Herb Ryan. Yeah. And oh, I have this picture of him. I just found it. I'm so happy. I'm gonna put it in my son's room. So here, well, that's him. That's why I say, when you ask how much of an impact has LMU had on your life, and it's like my whole being. So I met Father Ryan when I was a junior in high school. I went to LMU on a tour and he showed up, gave me a tour, then we'd check in, college, grad school, we'd always stay in touch. So like my dad and I are super close. And he said at my wedding that Father Ryan was really like a spiritual father to me. You know, Father Ryan and I used to always celebrate my birthday together. It was my 31st birthday, the day I met my husband. 31. So I was pretty happy with where I was going. And the second I saw my husband, honestly, in my heart, it was like literally, like I felt this, like it's not like, oh, he's cute and sexy. No, it was like, this is who God intended me to be with. I mean, it sounds nuts for me to say that to you. But similar, when my children have been born, it was like these moments, opening the conversation with God in your heart and listening, right? So, Father Ryan, he taught me so much. Just the kindest, most wonderful soul in the world. He really became a part of our family. I was with him the night that he died, and he said he was the last because he and his brother were both Jesuits. And so he said the name was going to end with him. And I said, if I ever have a son, I will name him after you. Your name is not going with you. So that's where my son's name came from. The Bible I have next to my bed is from him. And it's dated. The day he wrote is my daughter's birthday, 10 years before. But yeah. Oh, he was phenomenally intelligent, but compassionate, loving, brilliant. But he just really loved me. He said to me that I was like the daughter he never had. So that's the blessing in my life. It's like I'm not really the hero. I just have these force people in my life, these force-field people in my life that have always brought out the best in me. Yeah, I'm lucky.
I'll say this colloquially. The goal of the family of schools is to connect the heart of LMU to the community and connect the heart of the community to LMU in the context of education. Now, when we talk about vision and mission, it's really about building that K through 12, K through 16 pipeline. Our network consists of college schools, charter schools, Catholic schools, and traditional public schools. We focus on 3 key areas: academic achievement, school culture and climate, and college and career readiness. We're asking the question, how do we do education well? You know, I constantly see myself in these kids. I can tell them I'm just like you. Me? In kindergarten? Climbing under the table, on top of the table. I remember a field trip where literally when the teacher passed out the field trip slips, I didn't get one. And I was in tears, right? I'm in tears, right? And I get home and my mom was like, what's wrong? The teacher said, I can't go unless you go, right? So my mom ends up going, and I'm going to go on a field trip just like any other kid. Stereotype threat. Are you familiar with stereotype threat? Well, let me give you a small example. One of the reasons I stopped taking AP history, and I love history, but I didn't really do well in the class. I mean, I got like a C or something. So most of my time in school, I felt like when I took a test, if I didn't do well on the test, everybody in the room was going to think that all Black people in the world were dumb because Darren didn't perform. I mean, it was so liberating when I got to Howard University, a historically Black university. And I realized that I didn't have to be the smartest person in the room. I didn't have to be the smart Negro in the room. And as a matter of fact, even if I wanted to be, I wasn't. So yeah, stereotype threat is real. It's a concept where you have African American students constantly confronted with negative stereotypes, finding themselves in settings where they feel like they risk conforming to the stereotypes in terms of intellect and behavior and a number of other factors. They fear contributing to the long-standing racial and distorted perspectives of who we are as people. We have stereotype threat, Afro-pessimism, academic disengagement, a lot of unique challenges as related to our African American students. LA Unified is about 9% African American. Our schools on average are about 50%, with our high schools being 73% and one of our elementary schools being as high as 90%. We have a lot of Black kids, and I need to move the bar for Black kids. I need to focus on things as they relate to Black kids. One of my mentors said to me, easy, that's some heavy lifting, because folks aren't really going to get behind you. I mean, they want to hear about kids of color. But the other part is just this. I know that that's the corner on which I'm supposed to stand. And hopefully people are working on other corners. I believe that whatever I do will contribute to this entire intersection, because this is the corner I'm in. I'm a Black man all day, every day. These kids need to see themselves in a larger picture. They need to know, dude, you can sit at any table and you should not be ashamed or second guess yourself, because again, you're just as good as they are. You just may not have all the information yet. But yeah, whatever's out there, you may have a harder time getting it. But that doesn't mean that you're any less talented or equipped to go after it. When I was nearing the end of my time at Howard, I started to look at careers. And I began to have this challenge in my head. Like, is it really about making money, or is it really about making a difference? That whole dollar versus, difference kind of thing was driving me nuts. I mean, both of my parents were educators, so, maybe I want to be an educator. But people were discouraging. And instead of looking at the examples in my household, I looked every other place for somebody to tell me what was going to be the best for me. I had an opportunity to work for Pepsi. And I remember a point at which I'd been working there literally for only about 3 months. And I was driving down the 110 freeway in Los Angeles, going to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. And literally I was maybe 22, 23 years old, and I was in tears, like I hate this job. I mean, there's nothing about this job that's redeeming. I mean, there's nothing about this job that will make a difference. If I'm the best salesman ever, the best I will ever do is help people to get diabetes and rot their teeth. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the best. That's the best. I mean, I don't want to do this. So I had this conversation with my mom.
Well, son, why don't you look into teaching? LA Unified is looking for emergency credential teachers.
So I taught at the schools in my community, and that afforded me the opportunity, one, to really make a difference because I knew the community and I knew a lot of the kids and I knew their families, right? You know, sort of connected. The other thing is that at working in that community, becoming a teacher at 24, it allowed me to really see I was helping these kids. These kids were also raising me, you know, because, and that's even now to this day. I have really close relationships with some of my students.
Darren, I can always tell the days when you've been in the classroom because your energy level when you come home is at a whole different level than when you've been in meetings all day.
The only reason I stopped teaching was that my family started growing. We have 5 children. So I needed to up my financial game a bit. I still have regular conversations with some of my students. And the contrast is just this. There is one who is hugely successful as an entrepreneur or a community activist, things like that. And the other is doing 25 years to life in prison. And that's kind of representative of the world I live in. It's kind of those extremes. For me, I just value people, and I think I can learn from people. I think the reason we've been able to be so successful in the family of schools, both within the university and our partner schools, as well as the community involvement, is just because, you know, when people trust you, they go further for you and further with you. We have a very close-knit team with people like Brian and Maggie and so many others over the years. It's a team that engenders trust. Trust is given, but trust is also built upon, based upon the credibility and how you invest in people. You know, when I got out of undergrad, I was done. And my wife, Sonia, said,
Baby, you gotta go back.
So I got my master's. Actually then, because arrogance made me say I'm not going to go back to school to get a doctorate. But again, she was like,
You need to go back in.
so I went to USC and I got a doctorate. And here I have to say that she's always the voice of reason. My wife, Sonia, which sidebar almost didn't happen because I was kind of a jerk. We knew each other before college, but I went to Howard and she went to UCLA. Initially, we didn't date because she was already a Christian. She was like,
Darren, I really like you, but you're kind of a jerk and you don't know what you want.
I had wiggliness on steroids, and she had determination on steroids. She was already very, very disciplined, very, very determined, very much, you know, knew who she was and where she was going. Me, I was just all over the map. I mean, I was really a wild child. I mean, you just think of wildness in college, and you might see my picture in the book. Then I came to faith in Christ, and things began to change. My roommate had accepted the Lord over the summer, and I was like, you know, cool, man, do you? But really, I was watching the difference that it made in his life. Shortly after that, I was facing a challenge, and I thought, if I'm gonna go through this, if I'm gonna do this, I need God on my side. So I went to a church that I had been to before, and I went up for the altar call. And I got on my knees, and I listened to the pastor. When I got up, something was distinctly different. It was nothing cognitive, it was nothing emotional, it was something spiritual that is like a light that I was alive, but I didn't know it. The ultimate change was gradual. So I just went through the spring, just did my thing, this and that and the other. But I know that when I look back on it, that moment when God had done, literally, he had almost, I mean, if you say, he had put this rope around my body, but there was like 100 yards of rope between me and him, and he was pulling the rope, and we were only standing like a yard away. So he was pulling the rope, and I didn't see the slack on the rope getting taken out, and it wasn't until about 14 months later that, you know, like enough slack got taken out, and I was like, whoa. And then it's like, oh, this is what's been going on. Yeah, it's me. And so, you know, that was kind of like, you know, like my conversion story. So since then, sometimes in the context of relationships, I'll ask people who I love, have you thought about your soul?
Your grace.
Mr. Early, I'ma be in your wedding.
Okay. So, you know, when school starts and, you know, you ask kids, you know, hey, you know, what did you do this summer? Then they ask you, what did you do this summer? And I said, well, you know, I got engaged. And that's when little Sherelle said,
Mr. Early, I'ma be in your wedding.
the reality is that over that year, I fell in love with her and her family. Sonia fell in love with them, and she was in our wedding. I mean, these are the kinds of relationships that I have with my kids. I have a need and a passion and the desire to connect people. It's all about the relationships, you know, authentic human relationships. So whether I'm ushering LMU students into our partner schools for tutoring, facilitating field trips, out there helping with gardening or cleaning up, or I'm in a room where I may sit with my dean or a university president or a family of schools principals, they're going to get the same Darren that my 7th graders got back in 1992.
I was able to bring my grades up because I wasn't really doing that well in my grades. My grades have raised drastically, and I've talked to more colleges. I wasn't even going to talk to colleges, and it made me want to be in college, and I wasn't even going to go to college. So it made me want to be successful in life.
So really, our mission is social justice. We have students in our network with dreams and hopes and goals. Our work is to help students actualize those dreams. I came from a family where I knew I was loved. And I try to raise my kids in a family where they know they're loved. I try to go out into the world and encourage people and say, you know what? There are people out there that love you. I love teaching. I love sharing ideas with folks. I love serving as a mentor, sharing whatever experience I have, that I've had from a life perspective. I sincerely believe that you're at your best when you're making others better.
Right in the corner where you are, right in the corner where you are, somewhat far from harbor you may guide across the bar, right in the corner where you are.
Am I dead?
I hope not.
Oh, that's my brother-in-law. He came to see me after my operation, colon cancer. Oh, I'm fine now. It runs in my family. My mom had cancer, effects of the bomb. My mother was born and raised in Kumamoto. That's across the bay from Nagasaki. She was 11 when the atom bomb dropped. She tells stories of bathing in the river and being strafed by American planes and how they have to hide under the bridges. That was her childhood. My mother was Shinto Buddhist, you know, Shintoism and Buddhism. It's a blend, very interreligious. And so the skin I live in is Catholic, but very welcoming. It open to other people's ideas. My dad was born and raised in Brooklyn, Dodgers fan. He entered the Air Force and rose to the rank of Chief Master Sergeant. He told us he was a map maker in deep black. That's what the military refers to as outer space. My parents met in Japan, post-war, got married there. I was born there. Can we, I don't really like talking to crowds. That's why I like conducting. You can work with your back to the audience. But there are things that have to be done, right? Anyway, a lot of people don't know I'm Asian now. When I was younger, I looked much more Asian. That's the thing they say about Asians. We look like we're 15 for about 80 years, then all of a sudden we look like we're 200 years old. Anyway, my dad's field was so specialized that he was always with the same unit. We moved different continents, and I thought it was normal that no matter where you lived in the world, you'd see people you knew. I went to high school in Southern California with a friend that I played football with in Japan. So it was always a very integrated community. But in the United States, 10 or 15 years after World War II, there was a lot of contempt for Asians. There are sometimes you feel like you belong to both, and sometimes you feel like you belong to neither.
Hey, tell them about the music.
My tastes in music are very, very eclectic. I was in jazz bands, rock bands. Oh, I saw everyone from Frank Zappa to the Eagles to Kansas to Queen. My favorite part of watching a movie is looking for the composer of the film score. I love Thomas Newman. You can hear the Aaron Copland influences. I love Morricone, The Mission, and those Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. Sometimes I feel like Forrest Gump. I've been around amazing events. I've directed for Jerry West, Jeff Bridges, Martin Sheen, Joe Namath, Stu Lance, Senators Edward Kennedy and Jack Kemp. I arranged Cantar Quiero, a collection of music written for California mission period, and music for the film In Spite of Darkness, a spiritual encounter with Auschwitz. I got to direct in Dodger Stadium. That's to say nothing of the cultural music that we do now. I arrange and fuse pieces of music together. Archbishop Gomez came here and I assembled a choir of over 100 voices of many, many different ethnic and cultural communities for that welcome mass and celebration. Maurice Duruflé, early 20th century French arranger and composer. He did this piece of Gregorian chant arranged in early 20th century polyphony, and I fused it with a Vietnamese piece. When I was looking for the Vietnamese piece, I knew the woman that cuts my hair was Vietnamese, and I wanted to see if she knew this song. And so when I was there, I sang it for her, and she burst into tears. She said her mother would sing it for her when she was a child, before they had to leave Vietnam after the war. She was one of the boat people, fled the country. Her father had cut off all her hair and dressed her like a boy so she wouldn't be taken from them and molested on the journey. We used the song called Boundless Love. It speaks of a God who loves you beyond understanding. There are more Vietnamese Catholics in Los Angeles than anywhere but Vietnam. There are more Iraqi Catholics here than anywhere outside of Iraq. This is the most culturally and ethnically diverse place on the planet. Fusing culture and music and people crosses all the boundaries of culture and ethnicity and continents, but also of time. Inculturation makes us and them into a we, as in we are the body of Christ. It's not just existing alongside each other, but learning to be together. I mean, who would have thought you could buy a Korean taco? A student came into my office one time, down in what we call the cave, and said,
John, I know what Jonas does, and I know what Chris does. He directs music every week, but what do you do?
Yeah, I'm the associate director of campus ministry. I supervise a portion of the campus ministry staff, but I'm also the director of liturgy and music. Chris De Silva directs music, and Jonas Bognar directs liturgy. I had really good mentors and who taught me to hire people who have the potential to become better than you in certain areas and then grow them into that realization and reality. Some leaders are didactic, do this, this, this. And if you have to do that, you haven't hired the right people to begin with. There are two ways of ownership. Ownership and possession. Ownership, plenty of room for others to share in. Possession, you control with a closed fist, and eventually you implode. If something falls apart when you leave it, it was built on the cult of your personality and not on solid principles. If you put the right person in the place to follow you, it not only will it go on, it can get better when you leave. I developed this certification program for the Center for Religion and Spirituality, having older students mentor the younger students who will then take their place. You have to take chances on people. You have to let them fail, but most importantly, you have to support them. Some of them will become teachers, some will become homemakers, some doctors, some will become mechanics. But they may all, hopefully, end up belonging to a church community somewhere. The most important thing in my life is Kathy and our kids. When the new cathedral opened, I was offered the plum job of music director. But at the time, we had little children. I asked the cardinal how many nights a week would be away from my family's dinner table. Kathy and I had made a serious commitment early in our marriage. I would be sitting at the dinner table at least 5 nights a week. If we don't keep the Eucharistic table in our own home, our kids aren't going to understand what 1 hour on Sunday means. So I decided not to go to the cathedral. I didn't want to take the chance of not being with my family for dinner. At table, everyone has a chance to share something about their day. My wife, Kathy's got a great eye for design. Our 8-foot table sits in the geographical center of our home. I credit Kathy with this reality. We wanted to build this home this way because we wanted our kids to be in our home. We tell them, we don't care who you bring home. I don't care if they're black, white, pink, polka dot, gay, lesbian. We don't care as long as they're good people and they treat you with kindness. We always set an extra place at table. The Jews would always set an extra place for Elijah. And in the Christian scriptures, there's a story where they invite a stranger into their home for dinner. And it turns out it's the risen Christ. At dinner, we don't answer the phone, but if you knock on the door, we will answer. Once there was a knock on the door and I got up from the dinner table and it was a young man selling magazines. And I said, no, thank you. And so he said goodbye, but it was getting dark. And so I said, have you had dinner? And he turned around and he said,
What?
have you eaten yet?
No, I've been out here all day.
Well, come on in. So this young man came into our home and I told him to have a seat. There was a placemat and napkin, silverware and glass all sitting there in an empty spot. Look on his face was incredible. One of the kids got up, poured him something to drink, and we had already prayed, but he sat down and joined us, so we prayed again in thanksgiving for the meal.
I'm studying to be a Baptist minister.
We're Catholics.
They call it non-denominational Christian, but at the core, their belief is that Catholics are not saved because we're not born again, so we're not Christians. It goes from minor indifference to open hostility towards the Catholic Church. I can just see him trying to reconcile everything you've been told about Catholics with being welcomed into a home and being fed a dinner. The parents in that picture were in my wife's 2nd grade classroom, Jonas and Laura. Went to school together K through 8. I was their principal and taught them music. When Jonas was 17, his sister was accepted to UC Berkeley. And his parents went to help her move in, and that night, the house burned down. All 3 were killed. Jonas lost his entire family in one night. Jonas called me. I helped him through that, and helped him plan the funeral. And when Sister Briege Boyle, my mentor, passed away, he called me.
John, You're the closest thing I have to a father figure.
And we talked. We love this couple. He became a fireman. At this point, he's a fire captain. But fire can also be for life. Easter Vigil, we begin around a bonfire, and everyone lights a candle from one source of light. The beautiful visual of that candlelight. And all the candles are sourced from one specific central place. That's the Paschal candle, the Christ candle. When 9/11 happened, you know, President Lawton called me to his office saying, "What will we do?" And I put together a big memorial service. To be the person trusted with that, it's an honor and a responsibility. That's what we share. And while sharing, I try to blur the lines between people and cultures. The more we do that, the smaller the world becomes, right?
In need of healing and compassion, we ask for the grace
To give my children a better future and a better version than what I experienced.
To move the bar for Black kids.
to promote social justice,
To know, dude, you can sit at any table.
To make the us and them into a we.
To say, I'm here to support you, I'm not judging you, God loves you exactly as you are.
To promote economic justice.
to promote environmental justice,
To recognize what you should leave behind and what you can use.
To liberate.
Believe in the possible.
Para crear algo mejor.
So that all may be one.
Good afternoon. I'm Sister Marianne Hipper, Associate Director of the CSJ Center. Wasn't that a magnificent experience? I know that you, family, friends, and colleagues all have been moved and inspired by the lives and contributions of our honorees today through the magnificent stories written by our writers and portrayed by our actors. Now, to continue our celebration, on behalf of the CSJ Center, it gives me great pleasure to present each honoree with an original tile designed by one of our sister artists, Ellen O'Leary. We believe that the sentiments expressed in Sister Ellen's description of the piece convey why we hope this gift will be a lovely reminder to each recipient of this special day. So, in Ellen's words, the tapestry symbolizes your life. The weaving of the colors reminds you of the people woven in your life that you have touched and those who have influenced you. The gold spaces are those moments when your heart has expressed great compassion and service. You have blessed our planet, and yet the tapestry is unfinished. May your continual presence express the beauty of your person. So now, the presentation to each of our honorees, who will also have a chance to say a few words if they wish. If you do wish to speak, please make sure that you unmute yourself after you hear your name called. Efren Chavez.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Dr. Darren Early.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and this honor. Also, I just want to say a huge shout out to Bonnie Banfield and Bryant Alexander. You guys just blessed me with your representation today. And thank you so much. And my family is my wife, my other kids are around here, but thank you.
Great, thank you. John Flaherty.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange, to LMU. I'm humbled to be in the company that I'm in and the other award recipients. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Christine Mary Nangle Kale.
Thank you. I would just say thank you to the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange. They've been such great mentors for me. Thank you to my parents who are here, my son, and to my husband and daughter, and to everybody else. Thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much this meant to have this experience with my parents today. So thank you.
You're welcome. Sister Judy Vaughn.
Thank you. I'd like to just say for all of us, thank you to LMU, to the CSJ Center for Reconciliation and Justice. Thank you. It's an honor to be with the other recipients, to Dory and the company who have shared our stories. I think for me, and I'm sure for all of us, this award just represents the reality that each one of us in being honored today is being honored by so many other people that also are receiving this award with us. I know I've been taught so much and have learned to be courageous and faithful to the struggle for justice. I would want to add that if we ever needed a time to be heroic, this is definitely one of those. We need to increase our heroism and solidarity with all the other heroes in our life. And I guess I'd just like to end with one quick request. Alexandria House has made a pledge as part of the Poor People's Campaign to ensure that 1,000 people vote. So I just would ask that you have a moment to go to our web page and meet the other heroic members of the Alexandria House community, learn more about the Poor People's Campaign, and please, please, please make the commitment, if you haven't already, to do so, to vote. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Well, now would be the time that we would invite you all to join us outside of Murphy Hall for a lovely reception. However, because of our virtual format, this unfortunately will not be the case. However, we've mailed each of our recipients a $50 gift certificate from DoorDash. Please enjoy yourselves and know that we are celebrating with each one of you in spirit. On behalf of Sister Judith, Stephanie, and me, good afternoon. And thank you all for celebrating with us today.
I have one final thing to say, that we want to thank our company of actors who have so graciously shared the stories of our wonderful hidden heroes. The company is Beth Ruscio, Lily Rains, Victor Manso, Bryant Alexander, Leon Martell, Bonnie Manfield, Julianne Homoke, and Eva Peterson. So I will now echo Marianne's thank you for the day and joining us to celebrate our heroes.
Thanks again.